Hey, welcome everybody. The Thinking Harder Sports for Coaches edition. I've got to turn the speaker off on that. Don't want to have that on. We'll get some shocking feedback if we have that on. And that one's off as well. My name's John Farrell. I'm the coach's coach. I work with sports coaches. I've worked a lot with athletes. Now I tend to work with sports coaches. Mental health, mental resilience, mental skills as part of the game are starting to get much more prominent. They've always been around. The New Zealand All Blacks were using it for decades. I bring up the New Zealand All Blacks because their mental skills coach has just gone over to Chelsea Football Club in the UK here. And Scotland, going from bottom dwellers in the Six Nations, came off to one of their best seasons in a long time. And they've got a whole lot of New Zealand mental coaches working with them. So the mental side of sports is starting to come in, but who looks after the coaches? The sports players have those 80 minutes, 90 minutes. If they play cricket, it's 5 days. They've got their period of time on the field, but a coach has got to get them to be ready for that. So who coaches the coaches? The coaches get, like the athletes, they get the physical, the technical part of the game, but the mental part of the game. Now, it's harder for a coach. I think it's much more challenging, much more fun with a coach. Fun's maybe the wrong word. Much more interesting with a coach because the coach has to understand how to look after their own mental resilience, their own mental skills, as well as being able to understand what's happening with their athlete, what's happening with their team. So they have two pockets, two areas to work on: their athletes' mental skills and their own mental skills. And each week we're going to be looking at a different subject. This week we're looking at imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome is something that affects about 65% of the population. More women than men, but it's pretty marginal. Imposter syndrome isn't, right, let me just go. I just want to quote this because it's quite important. Imposter syndrome isn't a self-confidence issue. Imposter syndrome is feeling like you don't belong where you are. You're feeling like you aren't worthy of holding the position that you're holding, even though you might be qualified to do it and accolades and experience showing otherwise. There's still belief coming up that you don't really belong in that position. It can happen for anybody at any time, for any length of time. And it can be I was going to say soul destroying, but imposter syndrome can destroy a person, can destroy a person's career. It causes anxiety, stress. It leads to depression. Imposter syndrome means that we can't really enjoy what we set out to do, to be that coach. We can't enjoy it because we don't feel as though we're worthy of holding that position. And for a sports coach, it manifests in the way that they feel about themselves. So there's all this, the mental resilience that we're talking about here is really about the internal formation, the internal manifestation of what's happening for the person, for the coach. This is reflected on the outside, and without self-awareness, that's where we would see it. We would believe that they don't see me in the right light. The manager doesn't trust me. It might be, my partner doesn't trust me. It could be any relationship. We always, without any level of self-awareness, look and react to the outside, but really it's what's going on the inside. So it's this internal turmoil that's happening that we're projecting out. So part of us is seeing that internal turmoil in others. The others around us, in this case our athletes, react to that. There's a relationship situation that evolves there. And one of the most important parts of coaching an athlete is the relationship you're going to have with them. There's got to be trust. There's got to be, you've got to understand how to, the carrot and the stick. You've got to understand when to push them and when to hold the space for them. So trust and that relationship is really important. And if you're not on top of your game, how can you expect your athlete to be? That relationship won't work, and therefore their mental skills, their mental resilience, their mental abilities will start to wobble. So it's really important that you sort your own life out, that you sort your own internal mental state out. And we talked about relationships. We'll talk about other things in the mental side of the game as a coach. But today we're looking at imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome, as I said, is the way that we perceive ourselves in the present position we're in. And we start to see things that aren't really happening. You know, just because you've won the championship or you've won the game, you don't feel as though you're worthy of it, or you don't celebrate it. I think that's something that's missing in a lot of our lives today, is actually celebrating the wins, celebrating the achievements. And we shouldn't be waiting until the end of the season to celebrate winning the championship, winning the division. We should be celebrating all the little steps forward that we make. And we'll talk another day about goal setting, but goal setting is the little steps we change. One of my mentors, Peter Sage, showed me that it's not the goal, it's not achieving the goal, it's who we become along the way to reach that goal. So each of those little steps, achievements each day, those little goals that we set each day, each week, that get us along that path to eventually reaching the outcome, the vision, the ultimate goal, if you like. And that's where we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate on a regular basis with those wins. It sets our internal psyche up in a much more positive state of mind. If we're always waiting for that elusive win, we're always waiting to celebrate. Yes, how many people are in the English Premiership? It's 20 teams. It can't happen for all 20 coaches. It can't happen for all 20 teams. So celebrating those wins, this is something that helps tremendously the mental resilience of athletes. Obviously, and it will help the coach's mental resilience as well. You know, if it's always hard work, if it's always uphill, we call that by me, when I'm always working hard to push against life becomes a struggle. It just never there's never any relief. There's never any let up. And life is about the experiences, and they can't all be negative. They can be if we want them to, if we let them go that way. But life's not about achieving big prizes and lots of money. Life's about experiences. We're experience-centric beings. And we're called human beings, being, not human doings. I love that line. That's a really good one. We're human beings, not human doings. So imposter syndrome is when we're looking at our achievements and we're not seeing that we're worthy of them. We don't believe. When we look out there, we don't see people telling us we've done a good job. And even when we do have people telling us we've done a good job or well done or, you know, great match, whatever, we don't celebrate that. And this is the result of that is the imposter syndrome, the anxiety, the stress, the worry, the feeling of it comes down to self-worth, among other things. But it's normal. It's normal. 65% or so of the population at times in their life will feel this imposter syndrome coming on, even though we've been told we're doing all right, that we're doing well, getting the support from management, that the things around us are showing us that we're doing a good job. We still don't see them. We see the negative. It's one of those things with the mind. When it's left to its own devices, it will always head back to the negative. It'll always head back to what we don't want. We call that scarcity mentality. We always look to what we don't want. And where your focus goes, your energy goes. So if you're focusing on the negative, that's where your focus will go. I'm sure, especially in business, but I'm sure in sports as well, we do SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And strengths, weaknesses. What do we focus on? Monday morning, we lost the game. Why did we lose the game? We're focusing on the weaknesses. Where do we focus? We focus on the weaknesses. But if we're strong at something, shouldn't we be focusing as much on the strength to make it stronger as we do on the weakness to make it stronger? So wouldn't it be better to call them strengths, opportunities, threats, and work-ons? Things that we can work on. So Monday morning isn't about the negative. It's about what we did well, the strengths, and what we need to work on. Things that by changing what we're doing with the athlete, changing the approach, whatever the tactical, physical aspect is, it's something to be worked on. It's incredible, and we could do a whole session on language. How it's incredible how strong language is, how much it strengthens or weakens us. I worked with a lacrosse team many years ago, and they had this thing where they got at the start of the game, they got the team in the right state by having their sticks on the ground. And I said, well, no, that's there's no energy in that. And this is a physiology, but actually getting that line, that energetic line, that emotional line for the team, and then having it an upbeat, physically having the sticks in the air rather than on the ground, change the physiology, change the words, getting much more emotion into it, actually created a much better mind state to start the game, to kick off the game. And this is something that athletes need to build into themselves. But this is where the coaching, the mental part of coaching comes in, to be able to work that in with the team, with the individual athletes. But also as a coach, you need to be able to put yourself in that right state. If you have an argument with your partner, you got to buy roses for Valentine's Day, and she's pissed off or he's pissed off, you're going to be able to take them to you can not be able to take them to work? Probably not. Remember, we're mostly reactive. We don't think about the sensations, the feelings. We behave. So a partner pisses us off, we go into work, we're pissed off. We don't have an argument with our partner, realize we're pissed off, get to work, and then we don't stop and think, okay, I'm in a different environment, different situation. I need to deal with that one, but park it, leave it there, and then go onto the training field or into the changing rooms. No, most of us take it with us. We take the shit with us. We lose the game, we take that crap with us back home. The management don't like what we're doing, or that relationship goes downhill, then that flows over through us as the coach into the game, into the team. So having that ability of self-awareness, and that's one of the big parts of overcoming imposter syndrome. Let me just bring my page back up here again. It's being able to take control, so that when we're in front of the athlete, we're not bringing all our stuff in with us. Now, imposter syndrome, as I've said, is not thinking we're good enough. Now, if we go in front of the athlete, in front of the team with that imposter syndrome, and we're not saying anything about it, but if we go in with that sense, that feeling, then that's what's going to come out. Most of our communication's non-verbal. Most of what other people pick up about from us is non-verbal. There's this dance of non-verbal, non-spoken physiology, tones going on amongst the parties in the relationship. And that's what we bring to the party. So it's critically important that a coach grasps hold of that imposter syndrome and deals with it. It's affecting all the parts of the career, of the sport, but it's also affecting all the other relationships that the coach would have in their lives, with management, with their social life. And the deeper that feeling, the deeper that imposter syndrome sense, emotion is happening for the person, for the coach, the more it's going to overflow into their relationships. We call it dis-ease. When we try to suppress these feelings, oh no, okay, I'm not feeling up to this, but I have to do the job. We suppress that feeling. We create a stress in our physiology, in our body. causes a dis-ease in our body. And we end up at 50 with ulcers or heart trouble or respiratory issues. All this sort of thing can be, an awful lot of it can be due to mental issues, mental stress that's going on. Now, this isn't mental stress that's going to come out and put us into an institution. This is stuff that's just sitting, simmering below the surface, comes out in our body language and our voice communication, the non-verbal part. But it goes on for years, for decades, all of our lives. So it's a really important part of achieving success as a coach, to be able to take control of these emotions, the negative emotions that come up. It's just as important to be able to take control of the positive emotions that come up, because you don't want your players on the field to be out of control, arrogant, if you like, or too much positivity. They just got this overwhelming sense of elation, because that is an emotion as well. And emotion and logic, one's going to win, the other one's going to suffer. If you're too emotional, winning or losing, you can't think straight on the field. Same with the coach, you can't think straight. Logic and emotion don't exist in the same field, only one. So you've got to be able to control those emotions, control this emotion. So imposter syndrome, like so many of these mental issues that happen for coaches, for people, is that we're not aware of them. We call that being asleep. So we just go through life asleep. The mind runs these patterns. You drive home, you get home, you can't remember having driven home, but you've managed to get there. You've managed not to crash the car. You've been on a pattern, an unconscious pattern. You've been running asleep. And this is where most people run. So they go through life as a coach. You've got the technical aspect, you've got the physical aspect. I think I saw some figures today. More coaches go online to develop the physical, technical side of the game than anywhere else. So you're learning all that part of it. But the evolution of what's happening with our emotions is not something that we deal with. They just happen. We get pissed off, we take it into the changing room, take it out on the team or the players, or we lose the game, we get depressed, whatever it is. So becoming aware of those thoughts, becoming aware of the emotions coming up, identifying where they're happening, what's going on here. If we're losing, and this is really challenging for any team, whether you're at the top, Arsenal's sitting at the top of the Premiership in the UK, the emotion there is just as hard as it is for Southampton. Very different emotions going on. But Arsenal, the stress there is about them holding that position. It's so much easier to be second. Of course, you don't win gold if you come second, but you don't have the pressure of leading the pack. And that creates stress. Same with Southampton, who are worried about relegation. Each game is stressful, just as it is for Arsenal. Each game is stressful. Arsenal have to win. Southampton have to win as well. The costs for the two teams relatively might not be too different, because if Arsenal don't win, then it costs them. So being able to not focus on the end goal, the end of the season, but focus on each game. And this is why a lot of coaches now talk about thinking day to day, not about the end of the series or the end of the season or, too far down the road. It's the next game. So they've broken this down into the step goals. So we've looked at that game, we played that game, the depression, the anxiety of a loss can be dealt with much easier. So becoming aware of the emotions that are coming up and becoming aware of where they're coming from, those thoughts, becoming aware of the thought process. What happens? We lose, we get here Monday morning, everybody's depressed because we lost. And that's why becoming aware of that, the questions of the steering wheels of the mind, the powerful questions are the ones that get you out of this. The thoughts there, this is depressing. We lost the game. Monday morning, it's going to be grey and shadows and raining in the changing room. Let's change it. Let's ask a better question. Let's change what we do so that we're not going to allow the team, myself as the coach, to sink into that. If start at Monday morning is hard enough for people as it is, but to start it on a downer because we lost on the weekend is just, it's not going to help anybody. So that becoming aware of the thought, identifying where it's coming from, noticing what you're saying to yourself, becoming aware of the voices in our head. You know, they're the voices that we sort of make up. We have a little wee tiny voice that's positive, that supports us. We have a really loud one that's the negative one. If you like, the champion and the critic, the judge, always judging us. And this stuff that's coming up for us, there's voices in our head, there's thoughts that are coming up for us. We need to acknowledge that they're not facts. It's really hard when the emotions come up, you become aware of them, they start to take over and we behave. It's hard to recognize that they're subjective, they're emotional opinions. They're not fact, they're not observed, they're not objective. So first there is acknowledging, acknowledging our thoughts and where they're coming from. Recognizing the voices, the sounds, the thoughts that we're creating in our head. And also recognizing that they're not objective, they're subjective. Take out the emotion from it. And it can be quite hard to do. A really good technique is the disassociation. So somebody that has an emotional overwhelm, to be able to, second position, third position, observe what's going on, removes yourself from that emotion. So observe the fact. So this is what interesting with sports, when the referee blows a whistle for a penalty and everybody screams because it's against their player. So the emotions come up. The ability for the good coach is to be able to step away from that emotion and observe, okay, what was going on? Because that's a little microcosm of what's happening in the bigger game. And the coach, so the players are playing their positions. They should be concentrating on the game. The coach needs to have that wider picture. So to be non-emotional and take a bigger picture, not get drawn into the referee's actions or the opposition's actions. That takes an awareness there, becoming aware of the processes that are going on for the coach, the voices in his head, the fact that there's a huge emotional overwhelm. It's a great video of one of the NBC basketball collegiate players in the final, and basketball is really fast. The ball goes up and down the court, and it's the team's in front, and then they get scored against to go behind, and then they score, and it goes. They go in front, and it's 1 minute to go, and the lead's going back and forth. Coach's emotion is neutral throughout it. In those key moments when the pressure's on, that's when you step up. You're looking at it logically, observing it objectively, the situation from the wider lens, being able to make the right decisions, recognizing that this guy's been yellow carded and he's not settled. He either needs to settle himself down, and there's coaching that ability into him. But if he's not, then he needs to be pulled. That is not an emotional decision. That has to be an objective, logical, critical thinking. All that stuff comes in. Decision. The emotions come in, and logic goes out the window. You have a real fight on your hands. So becoming aware of the thoughts, becoming aware of where they're coming from, the voices in your head, and the fact that they're emotionally loaded. Most of these issues that come up, the challenges that come up with mental skills issues, are the fact that we don't control what's going on. We just let it go. We run these unconscious patterns. So by simply observing what's happening, we can overcome an awful lot of these problems. And yes, I suppose they're problems, because if you're playing with emotion most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, then you're thinking logically. There are times when you need to be completely passionate, emotional about what's going on, because the emotion goes into overdrive, and then you'll step up. The best players are the ones that step into that emotional drive when it needs to be, recognize it and needs to out of it when they need to. Coach more so because they're on the side, they're observing the bigger picture, needs to be able to step in and out of that emotion. Out of that emotion is the process, the logic of the game. Now, most of this stuff is obvious and logical when we're sitting here talking about on a screen. They really don't come into their fore until those key moments. The ref makes a mistake, one of the other players trips your player up, whatever it is. The fault happens, the event happens, and people are triggered by it. That's when the quality people, the quality coaches, the managers in control, that's when they step up. When the shit hits the fan, it's those that keep going are the ones that stand out. They're the athletes that step up another gear. The coaches that take the game by the scruff of the neck and control what's going on, make the right choice decisions. So acknowledging the thoughts and not facts, acknowledging that most of those decisions, when we're unconscious, when we're asleep, are emotional. They're not a fact, they're subjective. There's a certain amount of logic fact in them, but there's the emotional side of it as well. You got to pull the emotional part out, just look at these things objectively. So how do we change that? You know, we can talk about it. I could talk about it here logically, rationally, if you like. What it is the drive needs to be big enough. So why do you want to win the championship? The why, Simon Sinek's book, The Why. The why needs to be big enough. The drive, and it's emotional, the emotional reason, the emotional drive needs to be big enough to pull you through, to decide you want to change this stuff. Owen Eastwood's book. Excellent book, that one there. Yeah, Owen Eastwood's book, Belonging. He's working with the English football team. He's worked with a lot of top international teams around the world. And he's talking all about culture. And the culture of a team can really help. Okay, the culture of the team really helps them understand a team why. Why the team are doing what they're doing. When they understand the culture behind the team, there's a much stronger drive for them to do it. Now, you as a coach need to sort your why out so that you understand why you need to change this. Now, that's the positive, why you need to change this, and it's not winning the championship. That's not a strong enough why. The why needs to be on an emotional level. The other question that you need to ask is, if I hold on to these beliefs, imposter syndrome is what we're talking about. If I hold on to this belief, how long have I had it? What's it cost me? Holding on to this belief that maybe I'm not quite up for this job. I can do a pretty good job, but not quite. How much has that cost you as a coach? It's a bit of a heavy question. It's one that can help the positive side of it, the why I need to do this. I don't want to get tied up in because I don't want that. I don't want the life that I had. That can be a really big motivator, but the bigger motivator needs to be why you do want to be the successful coach. Now, you might not want to lead a Premiership football team or the country. That's not for everybody. But your why still needs to be strong enough, powerful enough that every day something's going to focus you on getting towards achieving that outcome, that why. We've already done a couple of sessions, a couple of evenings on why, the SMART model, the GROW model, about building the why, building the goal, building a why, a vision, an outcome for this is really important on an individual level, because being a coach is not easy. Like, life's not easy. It becomes a lot easier when we have a why, when we have a really powerful outcome. And I found it interesting for years. I mean, I've set goals for years, for decades. I mean, goal setting is not new. It came around at the early part of the 20th century. This is before Henry Ford. It's an old concept. It's hard work setting these goals out because you're driving to achieve things. We become human doings. And we spend our lives, getting to the right school to get a degree, to go to the right high school to get the degree, to get the job, to get the relationship, to get the house, to keep getting things. And then COVID came along and we lost most of it. So there's something else out there. And I've talked about the human needs. I need probably do another session because the human needs are quite good, but just quickly now, the human needs, the personal human needs, the certainty, the uncertainty, the certainty that I want in life. I know what's going to happen. Now, so much of us had this house of cards that collapsed over COVID, that we recognized that certainly we thought we had wasn't certain. It was uncertain. Now we don't like uncertainty. We like a little bit of uncertainty. We like a surprise party. We don't like the bill in the post. That little bit of uncertainty keeps us on our toes. Uncertainty, the amount of uncertainty that you can handle is directly proportional to the quality of your life. Because certainty is the comfort zone. And there's no growth in the comfort zone. So we have to step outside that a little bit. And that's where the learning is done. But also these personal needs, certainty, uncertainty. We have growth, we have significance. We all want to be important at some level. Our ego drives this. Ego doesn't work with a coach as well. Doesn't work with anybody very well, but a coach significance. Striving to make the other person feel significant. Probably better concept. And the other personal human need there is love and connection. Wanting connection with people is what we put up with. But the real drivers, the real things that get us going on a deeper level, the real things that will help us understand and then achieve those whys are the growth and the contribution. They're much wider. They're not so personally orientated growth and contribution. That's personal growth. As I grow as a coach, then the people around me, the team, the athletes will grow and to contribute, because we were born in a contributing world. There's an interesting philosophy coming out now that we spent millennia in nomadic tribes where we had to contribute to the wider group. Then we sort of came off the plains and we moved to the agrarian culture and then the industrial age, and now they're in the information age. And each of these ages, we're becoming more and more insular, more and more siloed. But we spent, most of mankind has spent the majority, 99% of its existence of humanity contributing to the wider good. That's one of the bigger needs that we have, one of the bigger drivers that we have. So figuring out the goals, but really figure out the vision, the why. And then at the same time, asking ourselves, will I keep this attitude, this belief that I'm not good enough? What's it cost me? What haven't I achieved? What have I missed out on in life, in my career? And so much of it, unfortunately, will have passed us by unconsciously. I worked with guys for the last few years, and we're talking about opportunities. Opportunities are always all around us. We just don't see them. And we miss them. Somebody else is going to get them. So holding on to this belief, important question. What does this belief cost me? What belief do I need to put into place? Keeping this imposter syndrome going, keeping this self-worth issue going is not helping me. So what does it cost you? And then the last one is how are we going to go about retraining the brain? Changing the way that we're processing. Imposter syndrome thing or not, it's a mindset. We think like that, we see it around us. The mind has a really good trick of reinforcing what we think. If we think we're not good enough, that's what we'll see around us. If I think I believe I live in a friendly universe, then that's what I'll see around me. If I believe I live in a dangerous universe that's full of bad people, then it's really, how many people do you know that just always seem to have bad luck? It just doesn't flow your way. So it's a matter, and this is probably at the heart of the mental resilience, is changing the mindset, retraining the mind, empowering your thought systems, getting positive beliefs in place. Not an easy process to go through, because we tend to go towards the negative. So imposter syndrome comes up for a lot of people, for 65% or so of people, because that's just the way that the mind goes, because we're not taking control of it. Life happens to me. I've just done a session, a training on peer groups. We have peer groups anyway around us. Are they supporting you? Are they building you up? As coaches, it's more difficult to get a peer group that's supporting you. And it doesn't have to be other coaches. That's a good peer group to have if they support you to do better than where you are today. But we don't put better peer groups in place because we just sort of fall in with what's happening around us. We look to the outside. It's the same with our thoughts, our mental processes, and mental resilience. We just tend to the negative because that's the unconscious thing to do. So it's a matter of becoming aware of the thoughts, where they're coming from, what triggers them, recognizing them, that most of these are emotionally laced. If I have an imposter syndrome, I'm not good enough, we've won a few games, but I'm still not good enough, I'm going to notice, well, I said it. Yeah, I'm not good enough. We've won a few games. We've lost a few games. We've lost a few more games. So I tend towards seeing the negative rather than the positive. Monday morning, we look at what we did wrong, our mistakes, our weaknesses. So the mind, the words that we use, the way that the mind goes, it tends toward the negative. So it is retraining the mind, putting powerful affirmations in place, putting empowering thoughts in place, noticing when we're heading towards the negative to come back to the positive. It's not something you can do in a heartbeat. This is something that you've been installing in place for years. So it is something that can be quite hard to do. It's worthwhile. I have a guy that I reciprocally coach with on Monday mornings. First thing Monday morning, what I did well what our wins for last week was, what the wins were, and what I'm going to be doing this week. So holding myself accountable, celebrating the wins, holding myself accountable for what I did and didn't do last week, and then putting in place what I'm going to be doing this week. So I'm putting in place this week's goals, 15 minutes each, really short, bang, bang, bang. And it sets me up in the right positive mindset for the week ahead. So that's retraining the mind. There's a lot more involved in that that we can go into. I work with coaches. I coach coaches. So I work to put the right things in place for coaches so that it changes their mindset, so that they know what they're going to be working on. They're held accountable for it on a much more regular basis than once a week, so that you're noticing more and more the negative mindset, the negative patterns that are coming up. And I said before, by observing most of these negative patterns, we can start to integrate them and start to manipulate them, change them into positive situations, positive affirmations, positive patterns, ones that are empowering us. And once we start to empower ourselves, we don't notice this verbally. We change ourselves and the people around us change. They notice, but we don't, because we live with ourselves all the time. So when we're putting these empowering systems, patterns in place, the people around us start to relate. 90% of our communication is unconscious. We start to put this positive frame of mind in place. Changes our language without us noticing it. These patterns start to change. The people around us change. They start to move into that mindset as well. It's a big part of mental resilience, recognizing and just observing it. The first thing that I do when I'm working with somebody just starting this workout is to take out some of the negative words. Words have a lot of power. Words like I can't, I don't know how to. They're negative words. They weaken us. They disempower us. So observing when we use negative words, that's an easy first initial step to do, to just, oh, okay, I don't understand that word. Especially if I'm working with a group, with a team, just picking out, I don't understand that. You know, JFK, he could have said, we might try to get to the moon, but it doesn't matter if we don't get there. You know, we've tried and we've tried, and if we give it all we've got, but we try and we don't get there, that's okay. Well, that's not going to fill anybody. He just said we're going. Nike don't say try if you can, if you think you can. You just say do it. So much more empowering. Just notice the languaging that you're using. Observing negative mind thought sets, the negative mindset that comes into play. Just the words is a really good start. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for too long. I hope you've got something out of this. Imposter syndrome is just one of the many aspects, the holes that we can fall into in a negative mindset, a negative personality almost, because it affects our character. And find a much more empowering one to put in place. This is why it's called the thinking part of sports. The physical, the technical are the things that we do. The thinking part of sport, the mental skills, the mental resilience that we can build in, will have people achieving what Roger Bannister achieved with the 4-minute mile when everybody told him he couldn't do it. Well, he didn't understand the word couldn't, and he didn't have a negative there. He didn't achieve it straight away. But when he did achieve for the first time, straight away, that was broken for everybody else as well. And there was several people broke it within a year. And John Walker in New Zealand ran 100 sub 4-minute miles. So until someone changes the wording, the thought process, the negative patterns, you're not going to achieve it. Even better with when you've got children, they've got these negative patterns put in place to reinforce the positive. It's great with youngsters because they've got to have the right positivity put in place. It's great to be able to do that. Unfortunately, by the time we get to our age, all these negative patterns have been put in place. Anyway, that's enough for me. This is John out and the Thinking Part of Sports and the Coaches Edition. Thanks for coming along, and we'll be back next week at the same time. We'll see you again. Bye.